Hello and welcome to another episode of DCU Daily. We are back on a very, very late night edition of the show. We have lots to talk about. The reason why we took so long to get on today is because, or I guess when we started, it was still yesterday, unless you're on the West Coast. We're on the East Coast of the United States, but there's a new episode of Superman and Lois out there. Superman and Lois is back with its final season. We were watching that, and we're going to talk about it today. Of course, the Penguin continues to soar with episode 3 coming out this weekend. The Joker, on the other hand, Joker Folie Deux, more specifically, flopped pretty hard. We were talking about it on Friday that the predictions were 45 to 50 million. That was the projection at the beginning of the weekend, but the scores from the audiences were not looking pretty, and we now know that it's got one of the lowest scores, certainly the lowest score in the history of comic book movies in terms of a cinema score, which is not a good thing. But also, it didn't even hit that 45 to 50 million at the box office. So we're gonna get into that and so much more. Of course, as always, to do that with me today, I've got John. How are you doing today?
I'm doing great. I did some more Halloween decorating today. I watched all my shows. I watched a bunch of movies today. But unfortunately, I was not productive on the work side of things for my personal videos. But win some, lose some. So, I'm ready to talk Penguin. I'm ready to talk Superman, Lois. I'm ready to talk Joker, Super slash Man. I'm ready to talk about all the fucking things, even though I'm a very tired man right now because it's fucking midnight. But I'll
Dude,
survive.
yeah,
I'll
I
survive for
it's
an
yeah,
hour. I'll be good.
yeah. Yeah. Well, I mean, Kevin Davis already in the chat. David Zaslav's endgame is to sell off Warner Brothers. James Gunn isn't going to turn things around for DC Studios. I don't know. I mean, that's going to be I can't look into Zaslav's head. That's really between David Zaslav and what he. I don't think it's like a personal plan of his. I do believe that personally, if you ask me, that Discovery didn't just buy Warner Brothers so that they can just sell them off as an asset 5 years down the road. I think they went into you don't make an investment of the size unless you are trying to have a long-term success with it. I mean, if they want to sell off the whole company, that's another thing. But that's but before we get sidetracked, John, we gotta get into some news today. We're gonna get into the Joker stuff. We're gonna get into the Penguin. We're gonna also get into all the stuff with Superman and Lois. But speaking of Superman, John, there was this comment today from Kevin Maguire, or I believe over the weekend. Kevin Maguire is one of the artists of Justice League International. He was on the set of Superman while they were filming, and he visited on one of those visits. I'm sure James Gunn showed him around. He got to see some of the footage that they had been filming, and he even got to walk around the Fortress of Solitude, which we haven't seen anything of publicly, but he did. He got to see what it looked like, and
Yeah, he's
what he
earned
had
it.
to say about it was there's definitely a JLI sort of influence there. So, I mean, to me, that sounds like a lot of fun. That sounds perfect almost. And then to confirm that, this wasn't just a hearsay situation or that he's bullshitting anybody, James Gunn was like, let me endorse that comment from dear old Kevin Maguire. And he said on Threads, well, you have definitely influenced the DCU, Kevin. And boy, was it a highlight having all you guys on set. So, yeah, I mean, what do you think about the fact that we're gonna get something that is very comic, influence, and certainly from Justice League International?
I mean, it's. I mean, I've been saying this for months that yeah, like it's very obvious that
Mm-hmm.
they have these characters that you know James Gunn's been posting comics. It's clear that and he even says here the JLI influence is there. Like it's very clear that it is, and he likes that run, and and it's also very clear that James Gunn is doing post crisis, which makes sense because those are the comics that most fans that are going to see these movies, they aren't like the oldest fans. They're like in their 30s and 40s by now. I think that's like like decent demographic on who's seeing these, like 20s to 40s is mainly post, or those are mainly post crisis fans. Those are the comics that people grew up with. So I think that it makes sense to cater to that audience. They have, and that's why I was saying, like, I little divergence a bit, but that's why I'm like, okay, this is like the perfect time to like introduce Wally West because Ezra Miller is a sack of shit who fucking tainted Barry Allen. On top of the fact Grant Gustin had a hit show for 9 seasons about Barry Allen, it's like let's introduce Wally West, and the fact that like James Gunn is taking clearly taking so much from Post Crisis, not from a JLI stance, but it's he also pretty much confirmed that both of the Kents are staying alive, which is also post crisis because both Ma and Pa Kent stayed alive for, post crisis, which, at the time, Lois and Clark New Adventures of Superman also did because that was also during post crisis. So it seems like he's taking a lot of like that post crisis influence. So especially with the fact there's the rumor that they're gonna like make Hal Jordan Parallax because that happened during the 90s. I Even though I wouldn't agree with it, it makes sense that they would eventually go down. I'm not saying that they would do that for season one or at the end of the mini series for Lions Club. We don't know if it's an actual show or a mini series, but it just yeah, it's very clear that he's a post crisis fan, and you know, um, it makes sense that he would take like stuff from the late 80s to the 90s to the 2000s. So, um, yeah, that's why I'm stoked for this because it's like we didn't really get that a lot. We haven't really gotten that like because like I mean think about it. Like you go back to Christopher Reeve, that was mainly Silver Age, and then
Right.
with a little bit of Bronze Age thrown in, but it was mainly Silver Age, and then Batman 89, that was mainly Bronze Age. Um and then like Superman Returns was just, going back to, the Christopher Reeve era, and then with the move and then with the you had a couple stragglers, like you had like Jonah Hex and Green Lantern and all that shit, but that wasn't like a specific age. And then the DCEU was mainly New 52. I mean, sure, a couple notes of post crisis here and there, but it was mainly New 52, like the kind of darker edge, because that was the stuff that was going on in comics at the time. So it makes sense that they would draw from that. Now it's like, now let's do away with all that. Let's go to the stuff that people actually watch. And then on top of the fact that it seems like they're getting some influence from the animated series, which is what people watched during the time, which was happening during post crisis in the comics, that was getting mirrored in Batman the animated series, Superman the animated series, sorry, Batman and Superman the animated series is Justice League Unlimited, and all of that. And he's and James Gunn is grabbing influence from there. So it makes so much sense to be like, okay, let's go back to who like go back to what the comics fans read. Like that makes sense. Like really put in that comic booky feel. Like if we're going to put in that comic book feel, go back to what people liked the most, because that's when I mean a lot of people have said like 80 like post crisis was like honestly almost DC's prime until it kind of petered off in the 2000s after Dan DiDio became CEO of DC Comics because he's a fucking moron. But yeah, so it makes like 80s and 90s was like kind of like prime DC almost. So it makes sense that James Gunn would be going back to them. So it's like, okay, clearly comic books right now, nobody gives a fuck about comic books right now. Nobody. The sales are tanking. Nobody's reading. It's been rumored that DC Comics, specifically the comic branch, has been like being sold off or closed permanently during this time, and like they have like and DC Comics has like this little like has a closet for an office for these people because nobody cares about comics anymore. They're lucky to get 50,000 sales on a comic book per month. That's how it is. That's just the nature of the beast. Nobody reads fucking comics anymore. And if they do, it's a manga. So, or it's like indie publishers because everyone's going to the movies, everyone's going to the TV series. That's where the money's being
Right.
held. That's what people are going to because that's easier to get than comics. Because comics, more often than not, you got to go to you got to go to a bookstore or a special comic book store to get like, you know, special issues, and even trades are not like, and all that. So yeah, it makes sense that like, okay, if we're going to have this comic book feel that a lot of people have been wanting for a while, let's go back to what these guys and girls enjoyed during their youth, because that's what kind of is banking a little bit, is a little bit of nostalgia. But as long as James Gunn is like doing something like interesting with it and isn't just like, okay, let's go back to nostalgia, it isn't. But so he's like, okay, let's go back, but like, make a good like build a story around that and just pick and choose what is good. Like, okay, All Star Superman, JLI, Post Crisis Superman, a little bit of this, a little bit of that. And I'm not saying it's only Post Crisis. He's done some Rebirth stuff, which brought back Post Crisis into the mainline continuity after the New 52 fucking fell flat on its face because, again, Dan DiDio, Jim Lee, and sometimes Jeff Johns are kind of morons. So that fell flat on its face. So it's like, okay, let's bring Post Crisis back because that's what people know. That's what people grew up with. So he's bringing in Rebirth as well, although now it's not called Rebirth anymore. They kind of just, who knows what DC's fucking doing right now, because they are a shit show in terms of comic book continuity right now. But yeah, he's bringing in all sorts of different aspects that people will like. He was inspired by, but he thinks, okay, this is what people are definitely going to like, because he's just trying to cater to the fans and not just throw shit at the screen and see what sticks. I think he's actually like trying, like as I was saying before, like the movies that were announced, that's a bit of a variety of stuff. The shows that were announced, bit of a variety, and not just like the same genre over and over and over again. That the MCU has kind of become a little bit stale, a little bit like, what are they doing right now? Not doing great. So let's try to do it from this point of view. And I think Post Crisis is definitely the right way to go. Most definitely. So I
Nice.
filibustered a little bit, but I had a
I
lot to
think I
say about
think
that.
yeah, that was a
Sorry.
little bit is a bit of an undersell there, but Casey's like DC's literally doing a reboot every year
And
right now. Not kidding.
I would like
Um,
to say,
yeah,
I'm not saying Jeff Johns sucks. It's just sometimes he's not like, because he and Jim Lee and Dan DiDio headed the New 52, and they were not prepared at all. Because the problem is, what people don't realize is that Christ on Infinite Earths was set up for almost a decade. Like that, I think it was like 7, 8 years was like trying to prepare for this reboot, because they're like, okay, this is getting too confusing. It's ridiculous. And they, I think like, yeah, they pretty much started like doing New 52 when Barry Allen came back, got resurrected. That was 2009. Flashpoint Paradox came out in 2010, 2011, and then the New 52 happened in 2011.
yeah.
And it just tanked because
Well,
they introduced way too many books, and then they canceled half of them after like 5 issues, and then they tried to do like another wave, and it was like it just didn't work because they just weren't prepared. They tried to do a new Crisis, but it just didn't work, and it failed because they didn't know what the fuck they were doing. So, and Jeff Johns, I heard he was like an asshole on the Justice League set, and then there was also that controversy. I do think out of the three of them, Jeff Johns is easily like the most competent. Like, because I mean, his like when he's doing his small knit stuff, whether that's Green Lantern or he's executively producing Stargirl or anything like that, he's cool. He's good. But it just like whenever he's like doing broad stroke stuff, I think that's when he kind of fails. That's all. Like I just think he just needs to stick to like his he's kind of like Stephen Moffat in a way. Got to include my Doctor Who reference.
I
When he's
yeah.
doing showrunner stuff, he
Well,
doesn't work, but when he's doing individual episodes, he's good.
yeah.
So,
Well, I wanted to answer one of the questions from
sorry.
you guys. Mia in the chat, the Alien Legions movie. We have or Alien Legion movie. We haven't heard anything about that since that news drop last year, like in November, December of last year, that Tim Miller was attached. So it's in development. It's probably one of many projects in development. The fact that we haven't heard anything about it doesn't mean it's not there anymore or it's not happening. It's just I remember covering this on the Also Curious show, but Yeah, sorry, we don't have any updates on that project for you, but we do have updates on other Superman related news. So let's get into that. Not only was James Gunn, of course, talking to Kevin McGuire on Threads about Superman, but also James Gunn did a whole Q&A on Threads about
Mm,
Superman, and the one thing I wanted to focus on is that he was one of the questions he was asked was, what is your influence for the Lex Luthor, the comic book arc, or is there a particular comic book? Is there a story arc, that a particular depiction that you are pulling from? And James Gunn mentioned many examples. He was like, there's so many different things that he has pulled from, including Azzarello's Luthor, All Star Superman, and the Reckless Scientific Genius, and James Gunn's works from the 1950s and 60s. And there he included, of course, as he usually does, a few stills from the comics. Some of the panels that he's pulling from. John, I do want to kind of go through these panels because this is, it's a visual medium. We're doing this a video show, but if you guys are listening to this, then maybe turn on the video and look at these panels, because more so than what James Gunn listed out, I'm interested in seeing whether he's going to try to bring some of these comic book panels to life. And then also, maybe does it tell us anything about the story of the movie based on what we saw in the set photos? Do you feel like with this particular panel, how Lex Luthor puts himself in the same sentence as Genghis Khan, Attila the Hun, Al Capone, and Adolf Hitler? It's not him so much as somebody else in the image. Do you feel like this is meant to say that the Lex Luthor we're getting in this movie truly has those aspirations to kind of dominate the world and take over? Like, because in the Snyderverse or in the DCEU, the Lex Luthor was sort of became like this pariah after BVS.
yeah,
Um, how
I
do you
would
feel
like
like this
that.
Lex Luthor is not gonna really do that? He's gonna maintain his standing publicly, and then privately he's gonna continue to do. He's not gonna like go out and bomb the Capitol in the first movie he shows up in, right? Is that what we're heading towards? You think?
I think I like how it's more broad strokes because I feel like with a lot of the Lex Luthors we've gotten, it's just like I want to kill Superman, which is fine, but like I want him to like have a character outside of trying to fucking kill Superman. Like he's a business owner. He's one of the smartest characters in the DC universe, and I would want him to have like bigger aspirations than just like I want to kill this alien. Like which like and we'll get to that when I talk about the Superman and Lois, because that is a bit of a problem that as great as Michael Cudlitz is, that's a little bit of a deterrent. But I think I like how he mentions like Azarello Luther and a little bit of like the 50s 60s mad scientist. Um it was and so I would like more of that like aspect. I think that would be like I like how he has like bigger aspirations, kind of like what Gene Hackman was.
Mm-hmm.
It's just that Superman just so happened to be in his way. So it's like I'm gonna create, real estate. It's a bit of I mean, it was a dumb plan, but it was like, everyone was getting influenced by like fucking like Chinatown at the time. So um yeah, so I think like I'd like to see more of a Lex Luthor that's like, I'm gonna fucking destroy the world, but this fucking blue suited freak is in my fucking way, so I gotta take care of him. So it's like, all right,
Yeah,
let's see, let's
yeah.
go with that.
I mean, it's also when you look at this panel. This panel to me screams Lex Luthor and the Engineer. Do you feel like that's kind of a little bit of the insight that we're gonna get a scene in the movie where like Lex Luthor and the Engineer sort of have this almost like a Frankenstein's monster sort of a relationship? Or am I
That would be
misreading this?
interesting. Not something I'd like, but it would be interesting. Like, okay, I think that's more Luther and the mystery guy that we can't figure out yet.
Oh, okay.
So that
Yeah.
because that was my theory, like that. Okay, he brings in the engineer. She's just like a metahuman. It's like okay, whatever, and he uses her, and maybe there's like a bit of like cracking there. Like she's like you know,
Mm-hmm.
beginning to have like some sort of conscience or something, or like gets inspired by Superman, and he's like, all right, we can't have this bitch thinking for herself. Fuck that shit. So he has like maybe a backup plan, maybe something that he has or something that he creates during the movie. Either or is fine. And it's this Ultraman, Ulysses,
Mm-hmm.
whatever character. That's whatever it is. That's who that is. So I think that's would be the Frankenstein's monster kind of vibe,
Yeah, that'd be so
rather
interesting.
than
Yeah,
Hope was in the Azzarello's Luther run. So
right.
yeah, I think that's again, this is John's theory time. That's my
No,
that's my theory.
regardless. I think it's a very interesting panel. I mean, of course, you call it an adaptation, so they're gonna do something.
Yes.
They're gonna do something different with it. They're not gonna literally adapt it frame for frame. Um, but there's also this one here. This was the last of the frames that James Gunn shared. The Death of Superman. Of course, I hope you're not getting a Death of Superman for the third time in 5 years, or it's got to be more than that now, right? Let's just say for the third time in a decade. I don't want to see
Yeah.
the death of Superman again. Like we've seen it in Batman versus Superman, we have seen it in now Superman and Lois, I don't want to see that again in the DCU for a long time to come. As compelling a story as that was, but it is interesting to see how again, visually it gives you an idea of that this Lex Luthor is not going to be afraid to get his hands dirty, right?
Hmm.
He's not just going to be a political figure. He's going to also kind of get in there and do the work. I just find it to be interesting, just all the different comic book, sources and that he's referencing here. And sometimes it's more superficial, like it's just the visuals. Sometimes it's more the story level, what James Gunn is pulling. But ultimately, we'll get to see what that looks like when the movie comes out itself. Um, by the way, speaking of which, I saw that more and more people are now posting about how if you go to a movie theater, you might see the Superman logo and with the date, July
Hell yeah.
11th. I mean, in lieu of any official posters, because it is true and common that nowadays a lot of theaters, especially smaller theaters, maybe not your AMC's and Regal, but smaller theaters, maybe not the Odeon or something like that, they might like make a poster like in house, like for their own chain, or they might get a really good fan poster, and use that to promote if the studio hasn't sent
Hmm.
them like the real thing yet. Certainly in the case of Superman, we don't have any real artwork yet outside of just the logo that they revealed. We have that. We have the picture of Superman, but it's been pretty limited. They haven't really kicked that off yet. Although we were gonna get a summer of Superman, but that's we're heading into winter time. Winter is coming. Summer is not. Summer comes after
It's the
that.
winter of
So
Batman right now.
Batman, yeah. So, what do you think, though? Again, the idea that it's now becoming more and more tangible. We are firmly like 3/4 of a year away. It feels like, right? It's October.
Yeah,
It comes
less
out
than a
in
year.
July.
Yeah.
It's almost it's what is that? Somebody do the math for me on that. Is that like 9 months away? Is that roughly what
Around
it
nine
is?
months, not maybe like nine and a half ish.
Yeah, it's like it's basically it's enough time to conceive and give birth to a whole human child. So
Interesting comparison, but sure.
I'm just that's the closest number that comes to mind. I'm trying to think of like I'm trying to like quantify 9 months. Like, well, anyway, but I'm excited to see that you're starting to see like if you go to a movie theater and to watch I don't know Christopher Reeve's story, the Superman Christopher Reeve story, which is coming out this Friday worldwide in wide release. I've been seeing trailers for it today. I saw a commercial when I was watching one of the baseball games in the postseason, and so they're advertising it. They're certainly like pivoting their resources towards that, and especially now the Joker 2 has bombed pretty badly, with almost no
Sad days.
redeeming reactions from the audiences or the critics,
Except
which we're gonna
me
get
and some
into.
stragglers.
Yeah, apparently. I mean, yeah, there's that 30% has to come from somewhere. So it's fun to see though that this is getting closer and closer, and that we might be getting the first promotional materials for this at not just maybe New York Comic Con, but certainly the CCXP in Brazil. And then from then onwards, it looks like David Cornsweet has hinted at it. They're gonna really pick up the speed. So I just wanted to kind of like point that out. I saw this online, and yeah, I mean, look, the person who posted this is clearly very excited. Not that he's the person in the post. But um, with that said, John, let's talk about Joker Folie Deux, and let's talk about. Okay, that's the wrong video. But this was like what you said was the initial reaction from people.
Yeah, people are
For
making
Joker.
so many goddamn memes of this. Yeah.
Uh, well, as far as getting effed in the you know where goes, that seems to be what has happened over with Joker Folie Deux, and to the point where one of you guys brought it up earlier. I think Antonio, you mentioned there's an article like about um, are people going to get fired over it, and this article basically argues why no one will get fired over Joker Folie Deux, which is it's
Because
meant
it's
to
not a
kind of
DC Studios production.
well, but also the point of the article in general, and this is something that I thought it would be. So when I read into the article, I'll go to where I think is the key point. Because I mean, throughout the article, you're like, it's a collective failure, blah 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 blah. But here, there's a veteran producer and filmmaker in Hollywood that they interviewed who wants to stay anonymous. He said that it's a collective failure, but it was right to make this movie because he said that look, Todd Phillips is still a brilliant director. He has made Warner Brothers a lot of money between the first Joker movie, all the Hangover movies that he did for them. Despite the fact they weren't all universally beloved, it is still a big franchise for Warner Brothers. It has been, especially at a time when they didn't have other big franchises running. And he also, you know, him or her amongst other people point out, including the writer of this article, that look, they gave Todd Phillips basically carte blanche with this film. You know, they said, do what you got to do. There were basically no test screenings. They gave him control over the final cut. It was just a lot of what's the word for it? A lot of and
Yeah. A lot of
autonomy.
free reign.
A lot of autonomy. They were like, you're the
Carte
auteur.
blanche,
Go do
creative
it.
free reign, freedom,
Yes.
whatever. Freedom. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. And so to that end, I'm like, you can't really say much. I mean, like, hey, Todd Phillips did his thing, right? He did his thing. And honestly, based on the conversation we had about the movie last Friday, which you
Yeah.
guys can go back and watch because Liz and John had a very long, and I tried to add to it where I could, a very good conversation, a spoiler review of Joker Folie Deux. And you guys really talked about how there's aspects of this movie which you might you might walk away initially disgusted with or disappointed by, but if you think about it, it's really it might be making a point about that is hard to swallow about how people with mental illness are still treated in our society and certainly were back in the 70s, and how sometimes people who are have mental health issues and have committed crimes can then get kind of used by other people for their own means, such as Harley Quinn does in this movie. It's making I feel like it makes your skin crawl, some of the commentary in this movie. So, and like you said, John, it's not a DC Studios film. All future films and
Yeah.
DC characters will be DC Studios. There is a DC logo at the end, but it's like the DC logo that's not in active use anymore. It's not the DC Studios logo. So it is firmly not something that James Gunn had a ton to do with. He did see the movie at the same time as the Warner Brothers chief, the co-chiefs, Michael DeLuca and Pam Abdy did. But it was more for courtesy. It wasn't something where James Gunn was asked like, "Hey, what do you think? What changes would you make?" And yeah, I mean, they let Todd Phillips do his thing, and Todd Phillips will continue to be able to do his thing because he still made, quite frankly, one of the most profitable movies that Warner Brothers has ever put out, certainly over the last 15, 20 years. So that earns him a certain amount of cachet. What I will say though, it was interesting. I found this other article about how another director who's really struggled at the box office recently, and Francis Ford Coppola, he praised Todd Phillips. He's like, hey man, he's always one step ahead of the audience. And one way to look at it is, of course he's gonna say that his movie got a D, and actually his movie got a D plus, and then Todd Phillips got a D. So they're kind of in the same category right now, which is it's odd. It's kind of like two students who are usually at the front of the class and are excelling on all the exams, but somehow failed the most recent one, and now you're like, what happened, guys? And they're just like, well, we were, we didn't fail. We just answered the questions so well that the teacher couldn't understand what we were trying to say. That seems to be where both of these stories are landing right now. But John, the bigger story outside of just the audience reactions is, or I guess just as equally a big story is where the box office for this movie is, right? Let's talk about that real quickly before we get into the review for the
Yes.
Penguin and we get into Superman and Lois. But Joker Folie, dude, not only got a D cinema score, which is the lowest in the history of comic book movies. No other comic book movie has had as low
Which
of a
is
score.
interesting. Consider Thor: Love and Thunder exists.
Well, no,
So
but the thing is, audience cinema scores are literally what they do is they interview people coming out of the movie theaters having seen the movie. So it's an audience score. It's about as pure a metric of people come out of the theater and their initial like, oh my god, that was amazing, A plus. Oh my fuck that movie, D minus. Like that's kind of what this is based on.
I know.
And usually what happens is even the movies that, are getting a bad Rotten Tomatoes score, like such as a Batman v Superman, most people walking out of it feel like they had a good time because they got a bunch of action, they got a bunch of adventure, they got like their superhero hero stuff, they got the villain stuff. It just feels like this movie was so far removed from being a comic book movie that I guess maybe like you said, people just didn't get the movie they expected to get, and that's what caused them to sort of like have the reaction that they did, which could be true for some people. I don't think that's why everybody doesn't like the movie. There's a lot of reasons why you can hate the film, or be disappointed by it. But also, John, it didn't even hit the mark that they were predicting at the beginning of the last weekend, because we were doing the show on Friday and we were looking at the
Mm.
headlines and the projections were 45 to 50 million at the domestic box office. It ultimately ended up making like 37.8, which is just very disappointing. It's so far off the mark. If you look at it, the initial projections when the tracking came in 3 weeks ago were 70 million. So this number is literally pretty much half of that. And when we were looking at long-term projections a couple of months ago, they were talking about over 100 million. So if you look at it by that metric, it's like one third of that. Are you surprised by these numbers? Are you surprised that it didn't even hit the number that they were projecting at the beginning of the weekend
I
because it just kind
mean,
of kept falling?
they definitely didn't hit the number they projected like a couple months back, which was like
Yeah.
145 million.
I think it was like a big range. It was 111 to 145. So like, yeah, you know. Um
Yeah. So um it's a shame, but I do hope that maybe worldwide will be better. Um I hope that it does get its money back, but like it's fine. Like I don't it for me, I liked it. If other people don't, that's fine. But I guess it was like kind of like because I heard like Cannes was like or Venice or whatever it was. Um I mean, and they're a bunch of I was like, all right, they're a bunch of pretentious fuckwads. Like, what do they know? And then they fucking gave a standing ovation to The Whale. And outside of Brandon Fraser, that movie I heard was terrible. So it's like, all right, whatever. Um, so I mean, yeah, I guess it was like after that, I guess it was a little bit to be expected, but I'm just kind of so far removed from it at this point because everyone hates it. Meanwhile, I like it, but you know, that's just how it be, I guess.
Yeah, well, look, there's been plenty of times where I've been on the wrong end of the majority of the audience, in terms of like how they feel about a movie. Like I, for example, think that the Batman v Superman Rotten Tomato score is way too low. It wasn't that bad, but it's okay. Like movies are a form of art, and art is subjective. It's like it will hit everybody differently. It's okay if you didn't like a movie and somebody else did, and vice versa. Ultimately, as far as the financial side of things go, it did have a $121 million global opening, which is good. But it's still far from profitable. Like the movie still needs to make a lot more money to be profitable. I think there was another article I had pulled up. Let me see. It was more to do with the box office of it. And in terms of like what. Here we go. So this is not an article, but it's a post on Threads because I was looking at like comparisons, right? Like how does this movie's box office compare to other comic book movies that have opened in similar ranges or have been so far off their expectation? And it's kind of telling that this how badly this movie is performing so far when you see that it it earning less than $40 million on a budget of almost 200. I don't think it was $200 million. It was like reported somewhere like between 180 to 190 million. I mean, of course, they spend a bunch more money on marketing it too, but with that budget, with that opening weekend of less than 40 million, it's like you talked about. It's basically around 3 times less. Certainly less than half of the first movie made, which was like 96 million at its domestic weekend, at the opening weekend, in North America. I mean, worldwide it made over 200 million, I believe. So even that, by that measure, it's like half the 121 million. But the fact that it's lower than the Flash and the Marvels as well is like, I'm like, the Flash and the Marvels did not end up with good numbers by the time they exited theaters. Do you think that
No,
bodes well at all for this movie? Because
probably
the Flash
not.
and the Marvels had higher scores than this movie does. So I'm like, do you think this movie is really just gonna like fall apart at the box office, or do you think there's any
Probably.
chance of redemption?
It's probably gonna fall apart. I would guess now with these numbers, I could see it making maybe like 300 million, like at the most. But however, the worldwide could be different. Like worldwide was um like I know the worldwide was kind of unique in comparison, but like I don't know, like maybe the worldwide will be a little bit better,
It,
but
it
who
could help
knows?
rescue some of it, but I doubt it's gonna help make up the shortfall domestically, right? It's like it's
Yeah.
not.
Well, I mean, the
Um,
international so far is 77 million.
yeah.
So
I mean, so
that's like
worldwide, when you add the numbers up, it's like 120
it's like
one, right?
114. So
140, yeah.
yeah.
Look, it's gotta make like $450 million to kind of break even based on the amount of money they've invested in this. When you look at the marketing and the cost of the movie itself, Lady Gaga, I think, took somewhere over like $12 million home for this movie, her paycheck. Uh, Joaquin Phoenix and Todd Phillips got close to like 20 million, if I remember hearing these numbers correctly. So they put a lot of money in bringing these talents back. It was always going to be a high risk, high reward situation because you're bringing a lot of talent in, you're giving them total creative freedom. And so there's always the risk that, they can make something that is not going to be very audience friendly necessarily, at least on a blockbuster level. But there's also the chance they make something so brilliant it's an absolute classic. Unfortunately, yeah, and then, a lot of times things that kind of end up somewhere in the middle on that spectrum. It just feels like in this case we kind of went with the nobody liked this movie or virtually nobody liked this movie end of the spectrum, which is unfortunate. It is, but that's the chance, that's the risk that you run when you're giving a filmmaker total creative freedom. I mean, there's very few filmmakers who get total creative freedom and don't strike out every once in a while, right? Like Denis Villeneuve has made movies that not everybody liked. You've got like Francis Ford Coppola of all people. He's got a movie out in theaters right now that almost nobody's going to see. He's collectively known by most people in the world of film, most normal people even, as one of the greatest, like people who are not even working in film production, as one of the greatest filmmakers of all time. The critic score is still sitting at a 33% now with almost 300 reviews. And Joker's got a popcorn meter score that is absolutely abysmal. I'll be honest with you, a movie of this scale, like a blockbuster caliber movie with a budget over 150 million dollars, I've never seen a audience score of like less than like 35%, less than 40%. It's like this number might dip even further. I mean, 31% sounds, it just, it means audiences are not liking it even as much as critics are. It's just disappointing. But yeah, I mean, it could be one of those things where this movie could just completely,
The
wither and
the
die,
bet I think best
or
case scenario is like this will become a cult hit like
cult
15 years
hit.
down the
That's what I'm
line.
saying. People will be like, "Oh my god, this movie was so ahead of its time. We just didn't understand it back then." I'm still
Yeah.
waiting for people to say that about Batman v Superman, or Man of Steel. Like, I'm
I mean,
still on
people
that
kind
side
of
of
did
things.
with the
But
Ultimate Edition. They're like, "Oh my god, this was so
yeah,
much better." So,
yeah,
and it is. Not by much,
yeah.
but it is. So,
Hunter Iggy in the chat. Hello, Hunter. We got Mr. Carter in the chat. We haven't seen you in a while. He's saying Word of mouth killed it fast. Good thing it wasn't a DC Studios production and they had to brag about the Penguin. I am happy about that. I will say that. I mean, for what it's worth, the fact that they kept this pretty separated. But honestly, it wasn't something that they had to try very hard to do because James Gunn was firmly not involved with this whatsoever. The movie was well into production before James Gunn got into his job. It was on the Warner Brothers side of the lot. It wasn't really a DC Studios thing. And quite frankly, it doesn't need to be attached to the DC Studios brand. And DC Studios has got their hands full with all the stuff they're working on, including all the marketing right now for Superman: The Christopher Reeve Story, which comes out this Friday. So if you didn't get a chance to see it in one of the limited releases, like when John went to see it, you can go see it in a movie theater near you this Friday, October 11th. I'm gonna go see it. Maybe John will go see it again. Make sure to bring a box of tissues because it is a tearjerker, is what I've been told. But John, let's keep the ball rolling here. We have so much more to talk about. We're going to start off with the review of the first of our two TV shows, and that is, of course, the other Batman villain, the one who's being received very, very well, Oz Cobb, and Sophia Falcone. They seem to, in the latest episode, episode 3 for the Penguin, they formed like this odd couple kind of relationship, sort of like maybe even a enemy of my enemy is my friend sort of a situation. Convenient allies because their interests are aligned right now, but they're gonna probably turn on each other the moment, at the soonest moment they can. And so I wanted to ask you, having seen the third episode, what are your thoughts on just the quality of storytelling? Do you feel like the momentum from the first couple of episodes, especially the premiere, continues? Do you feel like this episode slows down a little bit? And then just kind of tell us a little bit more about what's going on in the show.
I think this was definitely more of a character-driven episode. It kind of focuses on Victor Aguilar a little bit more. Like it talks about his family a little bit, what happened to them, and how it affected him, and how what he's kind of going through. Like he's like kind of stuck in this life of like, okay, I kind of like what I'm doing with the Penguin, but also at the same time I'm kind of not sure about it, and am I doing this because I like it, or is he like holding me hostage? Is what so like what am I doing here? And then like also grappling with his past, um and like either really doubling down, um or trying to get out. So we do have that, and I thought I liked that aspect of the episode the most. I thought like really even though it unfortunately slows the momentum of the previous episode, like I wish we kind of got one more episode of like them like really like going really beyond. It's not saying they don't in this episode, but I wish there was like more of like, okay, it ramped up in the second episode. Let's ramp it up in the third, and then maybe slow it down, and then give us like a major midpoint. But now it's like I just don't want like I don't want it to be like a hills and valleys sort of situation, like a fucking erratic heartbeat, where it's like, okay, first episode, second episode, like I don't want it to be like that. But even then, I still liked this episode a lot, and I liked mainly the Victor Aguilar stuff. But I thought the Sophia and Penguin like team up was pretty good. We there was a little bit of revenge from the Penguin against Johnny Vitti, which was nice to see. Um,
Yeah, he's been
there's
getting the upper hand for the first few episodes. And I'm like, the guy is sitting on those photos for this long, yet to give them up in the last episode. It's about time, that there's a little bit of karma to come around
Yeah,
for Johnny
and
Vitti.
yeah, so that they started making their moves. They started, doing a what is it? A team up with, or like a collaboration with the Triads, which is like a Chinese gang and trying to make
Like
moves
something
with
straight out of
them.
Rush Hour.
Yeah, like something like that, but also like introducing like drug stuff, like getting
Yeah.
it up on the drug trade, whatever, like Alberto was
So
talking
you're
about in the
saying
first
that it was
episode.
White Russian, like the White Russian is really what they were after in this
Yeah,
episode? Is that what the
that's what it
drugs?
was. That's
Yeah.
what it was. KG Beast comes out in this episode.
KGC.
Um,
Are you the
but
White Russian? Like he's He's not a man. It's a boat. It's a ship. Never mind.
Yeah,
Sorry.
fucking world's greatest detective. Yeah, okay, fucking idiot. Um, but yeah, I think this was overall. Um, I think it was. I think it was overall still. I like the second episode a little bit more. This one had like too many slow moments, but it was still good. Like I liked Victor's stuff and I liked the team up stuff, but I think it was just not as well paced as the last episode was just really that
Like it
good.
rolls, right? Like
It
yeah.
really rolled. It was like at a couple points I was like kind of dicking around on my phone a little bit and you know a little bit, not too
Uh-huh.
much. Don't worry, I still got everything and it was still a good episode. Um it just like I would say the first episode was like an 8 and like second episode was like a 9, 9.5. And I would say this one's like a 7, 7.5. Like again, not a bad episode. It was just a little bit more, disappointing, I would say. Just not bad. It's just like I think, but with how the episode ends, I feel like the next episode is like gonna be like really fucking
Like
crazy.
it's really setting. I mean, you sometimes you need a episode to sort of slow things down and do a little bit of
Yeah,
setup, so then you get the
I don't mind a
payoff,
filler
right?
episode. I
It's
don't mind
I
okay,
mean,
let's calm
but did
down.
it feel like a filler episode? Because I'm like, there's a difference between a filler episode and an
Not a
episode that's
filler.
like
Yeah,
doing
you're right. It's
something
a
to
character-driven episode, not necessarily a
right.
filler episode. A character-driven episode because it wasn't like, Victor like goes to like fucking Metropolis and like has like a fucking adventure. No, it's nothing like that where it's just like, okay, let's go. No, it was still like moves were being made. It was just like the moves being made was like almost felt like the B plot, while Victor Aguilar felt
Mhm.
like the A plot. And I wish it was maybe switched. Like not saying like I didn't want Victor Aguilar because that was the best part of the episode, so it was probably for the best. But I just wish like it like still ramped up properly rather than ramping up and then immediately going down. Which maybe in the long run, that's the best case of action, whatever the wording is. Um, so like if you watch like binge it, it makes sense. Maybe that's the case. Maybe that's what they're looking for. But yeah, I think episode 3 was a very good episode. It just I wish it could have been a little bit better, especially with how good the last episode was. So, but still a lot of goodness, still a lot of greatness. So
Yeah. I mean,
it's
it's
staying the course.
yeah. I mean, there's been mixed opinions when I was looking at reviews online. Like for example, like a lot of people talking about, hey, Wick is not just like playing the driver for Oz in this episode. He's got a little more to do. And they kind of hinted at it in the last episode where he's like getting a message from maybe his girlfriend who's like, "Where are you? You've been missing. Are you okay?" And he's sort of like, he can't, he's trying to stay in touch while, of course, pretty much being under the thumb of the Penguin. Um, yeah. And it's nice to see that, in this one, they sort of go a little further back, back in time, and it's good to ground the character of Victor Aguilar, remind us, that this kid is kind of stuck between a rock and a hard place. He's not there entirely of his own a whale, like, and he's constantly being asked to make choices which no kid, quite frankly, should ever have to make in their life. So, um, and I like that, it's giving us a little more reason to empathize with Victor because he's done already a couple of things. He chopped the finger off Alberto in the first episode. I'm like,
Mhm.
the kid has had to do some crazy stuff. He's had to bury dead bodies and stuff, and it's just um. But there's a side of him that we can all relate to, who is really in a really bad situation. So, I did want to ask, do you feel like this episode now helps the show sort of go in a new direction that was unexpected, or do you feel like so far the story is going just about as you thought? Were there any big twists that you did not see coming in episode 3?
I don't think anything like there was like a major twist or anything, but it was, I think like towards the end of the episode, like big things start happening in terms of realizations and maybe a twist, but like I would say like nothing like a twist, just like oh shit's going down, shit's going down and it's like right at the end of the episode. That's the major thing. Like I don't think it was a twist per se. Just like things are ramping up, which is good. Like it makes me excited for the next episode. So yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, this article from Screen Rant is teasing something that I do not necessarily want to give away. But was there a death in this episode? Like, did a character bite the dust that we didn't expect to?
Somebody does die, but nobody we care about. I don't think
Okay.
so. Now I'm
I mean,
thinking, like, did they?
this is the Screen Rant. Is whoever wrote this article has got an opinion that it might be one of the best characters that they killed off. But um, I like what Dylan's saying though. DC needs those slow burns in true HBO form. Also, the dance club and Riddler bombs going off are pretty ramped up though. But I get your point too. Yeah,
Oh,
I mean,
it's pure. Okay, I read it. It's pure fucking clickbait. That's all it is. It's like, did this happen? It's just like, no, clearly fucking. Like I like skimmed it. I'm like, okay, who are they talking about? I'm like, no, that's not what fucking happens. Stupid Screen Rant. Fuck you guys. Yeah, fuck Screen Rant. I worked for them for like a month, and they're like, your writing is too good for us. So they're like, you're fired. And I'm like, well, you could suck my dick. How about that? Fuck you, Screen Rant.
Yeah. That's good. That's okay. Cool. What do you think about the idea of KGBs potentially coming in at some point?
I was just joking, guys. What? What are you talking about?
Yeah, I don't know. Temple likes to take things literally sometimes, which is okay. Okay. Again, but the theme seems to be that an episode focused on Victor. But this is what a good show does, right? Like a good show will give its character some focus and some time to develop. And I feel like after the first episode, we've really sort of been focused on the Penguin, mostly trying to implement his plan, and then the whole rivalry with Sofia Falcone. And it's nice to see a little bit of the focus be diverted towards Victor for a little bit, because regardless of whether he ends up being a good guy at the end of the day or he becomes like the next understudy to the kingpin of Gotham that Penguin might be, it's good to see a character that's being coming to be more well-rounded. And that, so whether that takes a turn for the worse, then it's like, oh my god, like we loved you, now we really hate you. Like you gotta really like let the viewers fall in love with the character before you make the turn, right? It's kind of like in wrestling, they do it all the time. It's like when the biggest face, the biggest good guy turns bad, that's when people hate it the most, because they're like, how dare you do that? And I feel like Victor could have that sort of a storyline, because the Penguin we know is despicable. He's already like stabbed a bunch of people. Like he's let a kid die just so that he can put up a facade. He's working with basically the two different mobs who would probably kill him the moment they find out that he's instigated the war between them. He's not a good person. But like Victor, on the other hand, I think there's some room for redemption still, despite the fact that he's done a few things.
Maybe he'll be the new Robin. Maybe he'll be the actual Robin to Batman.
That would be fun. But do you feel like Victor's character will eventually sort of get to a point where he's past the point of redemption, the way things are going? Or do you think he's always are they gonna play like pretty close to the wire, where they're gonna be like, you know what, Victor, you might just be able to kind of forgive him for some of what he's done because he was doing it under the influence of the Penguin and the grip that he has over
I was just following orders. See how that fucking turned out.
I'm just saying that's not an excuse, but Temple's like, all the reviews are giving. I opened up like 5 other reviews. I was on the AV Club 5 minutes ago. You know what? Hold on, Temple. I will satisfy your curiosity. Let's go to Batman News and Batman, because that's a good place for a Batman show review. The Life Chose Me. Again, the theme is the same. It's fun to see Victor Aguilar being the focus of the episode. I like it. I like it. The Mia saying, I love this show. For me, I give 8 out of 10 the episode 3 of the Penguin. Perfect. Isn't that what you said, John? You gave it pretty much the same rating?
Like 7.5. I give it like a 7.5.
7.5. That's not, I mean, you guys are close enough. 7.5, 8, it's a rounding error, basically. The Watcher. Hello to the Watcher. Let me say hello to you in the chat. Casey's like BRB. Gotta use the commode. All right, Casey, go do your thing. We'll see you back in a few minutes. We're not going anywhere. Casey is, so you guys can hang out. We'll continue the conversation. Um, the Watcher is talking about all the different things this episode might be. Yeah. Yeah. The
I
Watchers
mean,
also agree with.
it kind of
Yeah.
already is no man's land because, like, instead of like in the comic, it was an earthquake that kind of destroyed Gotham. Now it's the floods.
Exactly.
It's so
And
it's
that's
pretty
been
much no
brought up
man's land
before.
already.
It is exactly, yeah. Even in some of the even in one of the post episode videos that they do, the behind the scenes look, they talk about a little bit about the influence, and I believe No Man's Land has been brought up at least once, maybe by Colin Farrell or something. Like it was brought up at least once or twice.
Yeah.
So it's not even like they're trying to hide that, right? Like it's definitely a part of it. Temple saying top 3 DC properties both of you would want to be made into a HBO show. Mine is Red Lanterns, JSA, and Blue Lanterns. We still got to do that episode, John. We have to do that episode.
I
Where they
know,
cast
but
all the
there's
Lantern
too
Corps.
much news.
News. We're getting to that the business end of the year for
Yeah.
DC, and it's everything is going down. So
Into Q4 at this point. So
I mean, by the way, Wick making it out of this show, I think he does. I personally think he does.
I hope so. I like him. I like this character, but like, impressionable kid with a stutter, like parents are dead. Like, by the way, this again, he's another Miles Morales. He's half, half Hispanic, half black. Not like saying that's an uncommon thing. That's very common, but like it's just that like Miles Morales was kind of like the first like big fictional character that was like black and Hispanic. Now I feel like a bunch of people are doing that. I believe they mentioned he was half Dominican. I believe that's what it was, when they mentioned in the episode, because he was mentioning like his past. Like Penguin was asked, "Oh, what did your parents do? What did your parents do?" So yeah, so not like that matters. He's a good character. Like I just found that to be kind of interesting. I'm like, oh hey, look, Miles Morales instead of Puerto Rican, it's Dominican, but that's cool.
Yeah. The Watcher disagreeing with Temple's assertion that if Vic is killed in this episode, that it'd be pointless. The Watcher is saying, like, look, it just shows to show how cruel Gotham is. I don't know. I mean, do you think Matt Reeves will go this dark? At that point, it's kind of getting Joker Folie.
I mean, who doesn't love a good child murder? Like, child murder is fucking great, man. Like, I love fuck them kids. I love seeing kids get killed. That's like great stuff right there. That's like immediate, like when, for instance, like the opening of I know a lot of people hate Halloween Ends, but like I knew I was gonna fucking love that movie when the fucking like 8-year-old kid just falls 3 stories and just fucking immediately fucking plants on the floor. I'm like, this is gonna be a great fucking movie. Fucking 10 minutes in and we already get child murder. I'm here for it. Let's go. More kids need to die in movies. Like, fuck them kids. Like, get rid of them. Like,
I think I'd like to state at this point in time that John's opinions are his own. They do not reflect the opinions or stances of DC
like
Daily
Assault on
or
Precinct 13. All that stuff. The Blob, that's another good one. Hell yeah.
Come on, man. Just I hope that was sarcasm. I know it's sarcasm.
My lawyers are telling me that I have to say that I'm making a joke right now. I'm making a joke. My PR team is telling me I'm joking right now.
Yes, your PR team is exactly. Your PR team is messaging you in the private chat and telling you to shut the fuck up. But anyway, episode 3 was just good for many reasons. Because the Watcher said it does actual world building. It's starting to develop more of the different power players that are on this chessboard on the map, and it's including, of course, now the triads. I do find it interesting that this is, again, like you said, really tying into No Man's Land, and like there's gang wars that are about to happen right now. There's 2 gangs going at it. I have a feeling that might expand to more things.
Yeah, like full on by the end of this would be like gang war. Like that would be okay. Like again, we're going into theory time. That would be a really fucking great thing. Like that's how Penguin rises to power. All these gangs are fucking at war with themselves, and they're too busy to notice his rise to the top.
Exactly.
That would be a really cool thing to do, like
It's
triads, and
and I can,
I think New
dude.
Dragons was another one they mentioned.
Yeah,
But yeah, that would be really awesome.
I'm like, it would be very interesting to see then how that ties into Batman Part Two, right? Because of course we've
Yeah.
talked about we might get Hush, or we might get the Court of Owls. It would be really interesting to see how Batman operates in a Gotham where there's gang wars happening. Where does the Batman fit into the situation? We only got hints of that, but ultimately in the Dark Knight, the gangs are all working together. There's like the whole mafia is like one big entity, even though there's many different like subsets of them. But like, are we gonna get one of those "I'm not wearing hockey pads" situations, or is this gonna be a lot more grounded in the way they approach him, a lot more violent? Because I want to say that they're doing a lot of rated R stuff in the show, but the movie, the Batman Part Two, is most likely still gonna be PG-13, maybe a hard PG-13. But like, I feel like if they're gonna kill off characters, it's probably easier to do it in more gruesome ways that we've already seen in the show than what they could do with the Batman movie. So it'll be interesting to see where the show leaves things off and how far up the ladder has the Penguin climbed by the time we get to the second movie, because the Penguin's going to be in there. They haven't told us the Penguin is dying in this show. So yeah, let's see. Temple is like, please no Hush. There are other more interesting characters we could see instead that are realistic enough. Fair enough. um Now we're talking Neon Dragons.
Neon
Maybe.
Dragons, that's what it was.
Oh, okay. The Watcher's like, maybe Vic's death pushes the Penguin over the edge and pushes them to grab for more power. That would be
Yeah, well,
interesting,
no,
right?
I theorized that a while back, but yeah.
Because that would be very interesting to see that the Penguin, because that would almost like make you sympathize with him a little bit, right? The fact that he connected with this random kid off the street that was trying to steal his rims to the point where he's willing to kill other people over it, right? Because I firmly get the sense that the Penguin has more of an attachment to Vic than he's letting on. Um, and that's just kind of like because Oz is who he is. Uh, but he clearly cares about this kid. He sees a lot of himself in it. Is in episode 2 there was the whole story of like how he started out as a driver, and then Carmine Falcone saw more in him, and he says it not to just talk about his past. He says it because he feels like that's what he saw. He's doing what Carmine did for him for Wick now, and so there he kind of sees him as his own prodigy. Uh, so that would be interesting to see how that dynamic
Hmm.
continues to play out. Mr. Carter 22 saying Sophia probably lost all trust for Oz now and might think he killed Alberto now that she knows. Spoiler alert, he was in bed with the Maronis who were framed. That's a big spoiler.
I was
But
trying
yeah.
to avoid that for Dan, but okay.
I mean,
Yeah.
it's fine. I'm hoping Sophia. The Watcher saying I'm hoping Sophia doesn't die. I'm hoping she gets tossed back in Arkham.
Nah, she's
She has
definitely not
become one of
gonna
my favorite
die.
characters.
She's not fucking dying
um,
after 3 episodes. That's fucking stupid. She's probably gonna get like kidnapped, or like all of them get like killed or whatever, or like she escaped or something. Like, again, she's the hangman, so like,
yeah,
you know, well,
yeah,
the hangman, quote unquote. But that's if ands or buts. So
yeah. Yeah, well, I mean, it's gonna be fun to see just how well the show does at the award season, Watcher, because I can already tell you, like, it's not even a speculation. Both Colin Farrell and Kristen Milioti are gonna get nominated for Emmys and most likely will win. This is one of the best shows of the year so far. Like, clearly, I mean, I'm willing to say this is the best show that I've watched all year. I just started watching The Old Man season 2. That was one of my favorite shows a couple of years ago. I'm getting back into it, but I mean, The Penguin is just on a level, like, that's hard to compete with right now. So,
yeah,
guys, let us know in the comments what you thought about episode 3 of The Penguin. Episode 4 on the way in just a few days' time on the coming Sunday. And until then, we'll have to just keep unpacking what happened in episode 3 and look ahead to what's to come in episode 4. Now that things are really starting to pick up. It's Sophia has a little more dirt on the Penguin, but the Penguin has also gotten some revenge on Johnny Vitti. So I like how they keep turning up the stakes on all sides, right? Like, it's the simmering tensions. There's some world building happening. You're getting more of the backstory for Vic, and it's starting to really give us more of a sense of the world as it stands within Gotham right now, and all the other power players that are involved. and maybe how we get to Batman Part 2. I think we're starting to get hints of where Batman Part 2 is going to start to pick up. So let
That's
us know in
right,
the
Mr.
comments what you
Carter.
think.
Fuck you for spoiling it for Dan. Go to the corner. No, I'm just kidding.
I saw parts of it. I haven't seen the whole episode, but I wouldn't be. I'm not surprised. I'm okay with spoilers. No worries, Mr. Carter. I walked into this knowing that it was most likely going to be spoiled for me. It's fine. I will watch it later today, and I'll be okay. Now, the one show that I haven't really been able to watch a ton of recently because I kind of fell behind on it is Superman and Lois, but I have been sort of keeping up with the broad strokes. So, John, we have now have the final season premiere. It aired only like 3 odd hours ago from when this show is live, and so Superman and Lois season 4, the final season premiere on the CW. You saw it. Clark Kent is dead. What's going on next? Are they going to call Martha? Or do they need to let Lois know what's going on with the show? Did you like the new season premiere?
So what it was is 2 episodes back to back. Essentially, it's just like 2 episodes. So it was the end, the beginning, and the world without. So it's essentially like pretty much confirmed that like I don't think they're bringing him back. I think like he's gonna stay. That's the vibe I'm getting, because like there was only like so the 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 first episode was like mainly the fight with Doomsday. We don't really see a lot of it because budget cuts, and it was mostly like Lex Luthor get like rising like from the ashes like after creating Doomsday. And it was like about like Lois, John, and Jordan being all like worried, but at the same time trying to make moves so that Lex Luthor doesn't like fucking kill them, like living in fear and all that. So there was all of that. And I think that was like the kind of reactionary kind of thing. It was like really well done. Like again, like there's like it just goes to show how fucking good this show is, how we're probably not gonna be getting Superman throughout the rest of this season, yet I'm still on board for it because they developed all of these characters so well, and I care about the family dynamic because it was well developed. So I'm still like, even though it might not have half of the fucking people that the show is named after.
Yeah, they went from like 13. They went from like 13 series regulars to like a quarter of them, right? Like they really shrunk the cast down for this season. Yeah.
And so it's just I'm like genuinely excited. Like I would say the action scenes are pretty good. They look a little bit wonky at times, but again, like that's fair enough. And Michael Cudlitz as Lex Luthor is just fucking awesome. Like we got like a heavy metal Lex Luthor. That's just fucking cool. Like and it's so funny how this is like this like the last episode of season 3 into the 4th season, and what the 4th season is like that the Suicide Squad meme where it's like Bloodsport and Peacemaker, or they're like, he does what I do, and he's like, but better. So it's like, like Bloodsport is like BVS, and he's like, he does what I do, and then Peacemaker comes in, and it's season 3 and 4 of Superman and Lois. He's like, but better. It's pretty much BVS but done well. Like it's like where we actually like give a fucking shit about these characters to like see what goes on, what we'll actually do. So it just really goes to show like how good the show is when we might not have Superman throughout most of the season, and I still care. Like, you don't have Superman yet, I still fucking give a shit. Like, I'm curious with like how how this affects John Henry Irons and Natalie. I'm curious how this affects. I'm not really curious how this affects the Langs, because fuck the Langs, they suck. But like, I'm curious about Kyle and Christine Beppo and all these other people. I'm curious how this is like gonna affect Smallville and all that. So I'm curious if they're gonna leave Smallville, because it's like Lex Luthor's stuck there. well, not stuck there. He's like choosing to make moves there, and he's like, and then but it's also like Smallville. They're like, all right, well, you know, what's the point of being here because we don't have Clark. But even so, the first episode was mainly about like making moves, like the idea that like Superman was still alive, them trying to like get help. Like Sam Lane was getting like, remember from like the end of season 3, he got like fucking kidnapped, and yeah, so like they're kind of like a lot of like B plots. Like I was really intrigued with what was going down, and that was mainly the first episode. The second episode was like more of like the desperation, because at the end of the first episode it was revealed that fucking Doomsday killed Superman. He fucking killed him straight and ripped out his heart. So the second episode, like, yeah, they went fucking dark for this. So the second episode was like them trying to find their dad's heart, his literal heart. And it was like, because it's like, oh, the Kryptonian technology could bring him back, like in the Fortress of Solitude, but it's like, he can't, motherfucker can't grow organs. Like he's not, he's not Deadpool or Wolverines. He can't fucking grow that shit back. So it was like you had like Lex and Lois kind of sparring back and forth. You had the Langs coming in, like Sarah, Jordan, and John, kind of making moves on. And so it seems like, they're like gonna, we're gonna, get him back and all that shit. But by the end of the second episode, spoilers, but since this is a different kind of spoiler, since you haven't watched most of the show, so it's not like you can like
I'm
catch
okay.
up that easily.
I'm good with it. I'm good with it.
So spoilers, if you haven't watched. So the reason I say, oh, we're not gonna have Superman is because they because Jordan fucks up, because he always fucks up, because he like is going around as like Superboy, and like Lex finds out who Clark Kent is and his family because of that. And then on top of that, he like goes, even though John's like, hey, you're going into a trap, and he's like, I don't fucking care, I want to save my dad. And so he gets into goes into a trap, and Lex destroys Superman's heart. And by the end of it, he's like in like they put him in like a Kryptonian like kind of like egg.
Coffin?
Like I don't know.
Or
It's like, it's kind of like stasis, like kind of like, think about like the like things in like Alien, where they're in those like pods, and they're like sleeping,
right.
where they're not like
Stasis
totally
pods,
asleep,
yeah.
but they're not like awake. So yeah, that's like he's like kind of in this stasis, and then it's like, no, we couldn't get his heart back. What do we do now? And then it's revealed that he uploaded his consciousness into the Fortress of Solitude. So they have him as a consciousness. He's still like technically alive, but like he's like he dead. He dead. Like he dead. So I'm really curious how this will go about. Because they have the makings for like a proper like Death of Superman story, because they have Superboy, Jordan, they have Steel, John Henry Irons, and who was they can't do the Eradicator because they already did that during season 1. But who was wasn't there a fourth? And then there was Cyborg Superman. So they might bring that in. Like that could be like a good thing of like, maybe Lex somehow like finds Superman's body, kind of like what he did with Bizarro. And like when he realizes that Doomsday is like gonna fucking cause havoc or something, like he can't control him, that like he uses Superman's body and like makes him into a cyborg. And because that was like the four Superman that came in the wake of Clark's death in the comics was Superboy, which was the clone, which in that case was the clone of Lex and Superman. I believe that's what it was. Then the Eradicator, which was a device from Krypton that was to ensure Krypton's survival, kind of like what Zod was in Man of Steel a little bit. Then Cyborg Superman, who was a scientist who died, who got like mixed in, who was created into a cyborg, and then but I think used Superman's DNA and was believed to be the resurrected Superman. And then there was Steel, John Henry Irons. So those were the four. Can't do Eradicator because they already did that during season 1 with Morgan Edge slash um Tar. I forget his name. But Morgan Edge, and then but they do have Superboy. They have Steel, and they could get Cyborg Superman. Like if they do something interesting with that, like they actually like resurrect him and he becomes a cyborg, but he's
So
evil and he has to like save the world from
right.
Doomsday. That could be a really good,
Hmm.
really cool way to go about it. But whatever they do, like I feel like the next few episodes are going to be like focusing on the family in grief, and like Jordan is like going to blame himself because he like let this happen. So he's gonna, try his hardest to like, like get Lex Luthor. He's like gonna get in trouble, but it's like your family's grieving. It's like, but it's like, so there's like kind of like butting heads, and then you have, John Henry Irons trying to like maybe take up the mantle of Superman, kind of like what they did in the comics a little bit. So there's like a whole different bunch of aspects they could go with. And I'm really intrigued with how they're gonna go about that because you know, it's just like I because that was the best thing about the show was the family dynamic because like we
Hmm.
hadn't really seen that from Superman that much.
No,
We,
that's
it's
always been like the pitch, the standout reason why this show is so different from every other Superman
yeah,
show and movie that's come before, and maybe even
because
will in the future.
it's always like Superman and Lois, will they, won't they? That was like kind of the whole fucking spiel of the Christopher Reeve movies, which isn't bad, but it's like no fucking tongue kiss that wipes your memory here. No, they're just gonna fucking get married. Like fuck that shit. They're gonna get married, they have
Yeah.
kids, and boom, there you go.
Yeah, I
Perfect.
mean, speaking of kids, what did you think about the new actor now that they recast one of the sons of
Well, I mean, he
Superman?
was good in season 3, and he was good here. Like, it's interesting how it's like we have like 2 seasons of the older guy and then 2 seasons of the new guy. I think both were great. I think I might slightly prefer the first actor, but like he's really good. He looks more like a brother to Jordan than the other guy did.
Right.
So I liked that. But both of them were great. I think I prefer the first guy a little bit more, but the second guy is really good. I forget his name, but I think Ellsworth or something was the older guy. I don't remember, but both of them are very good actors. Like you have like Mercy here, you have Otis. I think they're teasing that one of his minions is Eve Tessmacher as well. So yeah, that's pretty much Mercy. I don't think they named her in the episode, but she's pretty much Mercy Graves. Um, and then they name drop Otis. There's like a big, not kind of like a broad guy. Like he's not fat, but he's not muscular. He's like right in the middle. They name drop Otis because like you gotta have Otis. You gotta have that wink and a nod. Um, so I liked that too. But yeah, overall, like both these episodes, I prefer the first episode because it was like really into the family dynamic. And then the second episode, unfortunately, introduces the Langs. And I fucking hate the Langs because both Lana and Sarah fucking suck. And I hate them so much. But like outside of that, yeah, this was both these episodes were really good. There was a great I enjoyed them a little bit more than Penguin. Yeah, I know, but it's just like it's like easier for me to be more attached to it because this is 3 seasons of a show that
No,
I've
I hear you.
loved and
It's
cared
fair.
about
Yeah,
rather
it's
than
fair.
3 episodes. But even
Yeah.
then, Penguin is still like fucking spectacular. Don't get me wrong, I'm not shitting on Penguin, but Superman and Lois is just like I fell in love with these characters for almost 3 years and to like 2-3 years, and it's just like I love what they did. I love what they're doing. I can't wait for the future. Like Michael Cudlitz is so good. He's like he's scary. Like he is a scary fucking Lex Luthor. Like this dude, like, and it's not like just like, oh, he has a beard and he wears a leather jacket and he's cool. It's just the demeanor of like you look at this guy and he's like, I can fucking murder you with a look if I wanted to. Like that's this, and I will say, as I mentioned before, I don't like how this guy is just like, oh, I just I just want to kill Superman. And that's kind of the vibe here. But like the way they do it, I still like, because it's like, to him, like killing Superman is almost like an afterthought. Like in the way they
Mm.
do it here is like, clearly he's a businessman who's like doing all this stuff. He wants to kill Superman, and that's like his big thing. But at the same time, like when he finally kills Superman, he's like, okay, down to business now. It's like he's like, all right, I finally got rid of my arch enemy.
No, he's got other plans. Yeah.
I'm like, I got shit to do now.
Yeah.
But he also is also still there to threaten the fuck out of people. Like this, like fucking not John, Jordan had him by the throat, and this dude had like no emotion. He's like, yeah, and what the fuck are you gonna do about it, pussy? Like this dude could, like, Jordan could have fucking, tell that to Zod, snap neck. Tell that to Lex Luthor, snap neck. Like he could have fucking done that. And Lex Luthor's like, yeah, do it, pussy. What are you gonna fucking do? Little crybaby Superboy. Fucking get out of here. Like, I love this iteration of Lex Luthor. He's not my favorite. Like,
Is
unfortunately,
it like the Heath Ledger Joker? He's like, hit me, hit me.
Yeah, it's like fucking do it.
No.
But I still think that my favorite's probably the
Mhm.
Superman Returns Lex. I know he's played by Kevin Spacey. I know Kevin Spacey's a sack of shit, but like that Lex Luthor was so fucking good. That's a disappointing part is Kevin Spacey.
Kevin Spacey plays a great villain, both in movies
because
and
he's
in
just
real
playing
life.
himself. That's the thing we figured out. He's just playing himself. So, yeah, but it's just like he was so, like, Superman Returns might be a shit movie, but Kevin Spacey was so good, and he was like probably my favorite Lex Luthor. But like Michael Cudlitz, he's like, there's a reason they got the guy who looks like that for this specific Lex Luthor. And I was texting my buddy. I was like, I fucking love this. Like, he was kind of making fun of me for it a little bit because he doesn't watch show, and he never really liked the Arrowverse stuff, which is fine. But I was like, this dude looks fucking great. He's like so like fucking scary. And I texted him like the picture of like him in prison where he's got the bald head and the beard, and pretty much what he looks like here. And I'm like, doesn't this guy look fucking badass as fuck? And then my buddy's like, yeah, he looks like James Hetfield if he was a fucking skinhead. I'm like, yeah, that's fucking awesome. Like, that sounds scary as fuck. Not gonna lie. That sounds fucking scary.
I'm like, John, at this point, like, you can probably play Lex if this is what the job calls for. Like,
I'm too fat. And plus my beard isn't as cool or as nice. It's kind of like a more of a hobo beard. Like, I gotta trim it and like make sure.
So more Lord of the Rings than
yeah, I'm more Gimli than
that,
anything.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm short, I'm fat, I'm got a wily beard. I can't braid it, but I can make it work. But yeah, I think this was.
I mean, the Watcher wants to see Melissa Benoist's Supergirl one more time.
That's not gonna happen.
I don't even think this is connected anymore, right? It's a whole different universe. So
like last season, they pretty much confirmed that, like, this is not the same universe, because it was just easier to deal with because
you don't have to worry about all the connections and like
all the connections and like the weird crisis stuff and all that. So because it was like pre-crisis, it was like they just had a daughter, and then like post-crisis, like, oh no, you have 2 teenage sons. And then Superman is like, sons, so he's like confused. He's like, how is that gonna work? And then they're like, oh no, it just works. And then 3 seasons in, they're like, oh no, this is just a different universe because it's way fucking easier. Because it's like it would be awkward to have Superman just be like, I have no idea who these fucking kids are, and it would just be fucking mad, weird, and awkward. So like, all right, let's just keep it separate.
Yeah. I mean, look, it's a promising start. Episode 1 and 2 of season 4, the final season of the show. It's got a 10-episode run, so we'll be watching this for the next couple of months. It will take us to the end of the year. It's gonna leave us right off to the point where we can just switch from this on to Creature Commandos, which will be airing on Max, and I believe it's a Max original, so that's not going to be on HBO if I remember correctly. So you'd have to have the streaming service, whereas the Penguin is on both HBO and Max because it's an HBO original. We've got a lot to check out. Even if you didn't like Joker Folie, you could still go watch it in a movie theater. You can go watch the Penguin on Max and HBO. You can watch.
There is a bit of overlap, though. There is a bit of overlap. I counted. So we're gonna get for like about 2 weeks. If Creature Commandos is weekly, I don't think it's been revealed if they're doing it weekly or it's gonna drop all
I
in one.
guarantee you it's weekly. There's no way
I
they're
have a
not
strong
doing it.
I'm like 80% sure it's weekly. So for a couple weeks, we're gonna have some Superman and Lois overlap with Creature Commando. So that's honestly like weirdly poetic in a way.
Mm-hmm.
Like it's like the last of like
The
the real
CW.
like previous era of
Mm-hmm.
DC into the new era. Like
Into the new era. Yeah.
that's nicely poetic.
Yeah.
Like you get like it's like kind of like a good like handshake of like you've done good. Time
Yeah.
to you can
And
rest.
again,
You can
it's
rest now,
just
my boy. You can
yeah.
rest now, and then
There's a certain poetic
yep.
nature to the whole idea that Smallville sort of began this run on the CW, the modern era of CW, with DC shows, and it was about the origin of Superman. And the final show on CW that's gonna like kind of wrap up the DC stories on the network is a Superman and Lois show that's about the family of Superman, especially with
And
if
the death
Superman
of
is indeed
Superman.
if
It
indeed Superman
literally
is no longer,
began
it's a
and
full
ended
circle.
with the origin, and that's even more poetic. I didn't even
Yeah.
think of that. Even though technically, Smallville started on this WB and it combined, but fuck it. It still started on CW. Anyway, what is known as the CW now. So it
Yeah.
works.
It all sort of it evolved. It's the same network. Yeah. But I
Well,
mean, yeah, they don't.
usually here's the thing. Usually when it's like
They do.
22 episodes,
Right.
but it's 10
It's 10
episodes,
episodes. It's not.
and
Yeah.
it's probably I don't think they're gonna cut it in half. Like
Look, what they
they
might
usually
do
do
is
that
they
for
might
like
have. Yeah.
winter, but it's gonna end right
No.
before
What I
Christmas.
will.
So what's the point?
That's true, but what I will say is they're going to probably take a break the week of Thanksgiving, right?
Yeah,
Usually for those holiday weeks, they will skip a new episode airing that time. So
yeah.
chances are like we'll probably not get an episode on the Thanksgiving holiday, and then we'll get another episode the following week. They might take a couple of weeks off here and there. They might skip December. Like I don't think this is gonna get all the way to Christmas week, but there's a chance. Yeah, it's likely that we will get some breaks, but not like a whole 3-month break. There's not gonna be a big mid-season break. Um, and as far as the question of can the DCU top everything that's come before, um, I think it's gonna depend.
Most things.
It's so far it looks like the DCU is going to become iconic, but ultimately we have to kind of let the stories do the talking, and we'll have to just wait and see. The Creature Commandos comes out in a couple of months, and then of course Superman is coming next summer, so we've got lots to look forward to. Of course, there's a lot to look forward to in the here and the now, and as we have been doing today, guys, it's been fantastic. Again, another fun show. Temple asking again about he's like, I know that I keep reminding y'all of every stream, but can't wait for that Discord server. Yes, we will put that in
It's
place. We
good
are
they keep
working on
reminding
it.
us because we keep forgetting, so it's fine.
We are working on it behind the scenes. Things are in motion. Gears are in motion. It's something that's taking between doing all the shows and keeping track of all the news and everything we do with Those So Curious. It's one of several things that is on the horizon. But the goal is to definitely have it up and running before Future Commando, so that way we can talk about the episodes, the very first DCU anything really. So I'd love to make sure that we have that community on Discord, and we can just interact there. And then maybe we can even get you guys on the show through Discord every once in a while. So we'll look to do that. But John, it's been another fantastic episode. Thanks everybody for watching. The Penguin Joker Folie Do. The title of this episode is The Penguin Soars, the Joker Folie Do Flops, and Superman Returns. I mean, Superman and Lois returns because Superman might be dead. But it is kind of it's really poetic, and it's really nice that maybe we'll just get this whole season where with a lot of flashbacks of Clark Kent, and we get to see more of the Clark Kent side of him than Superman. But then we'll still get to see him as Superman, and that his conscience that was uploaded into the Fortress of Solitude. It's gonna be a fun send off, according to the article of worthy send off for CW's Cape Hero. And John, it is poetic indeed that what started out with a Superman story in Smallville is now going to finish up with Superman and Lois and on the CW. So I can't wait to see where the season goes. I can't wait to see where the Penguin goes.
Same.
We're going to continue to follow the show, of course, reviewing it every week. And we'll be back tomorrow with more news and updates and anything else that James Gunn talks about. We have a lot of other updates to get into, as we always do, John. So hit that like button, hit the subscribe button if you haven't already. It definitely helps us out. It keeps you posted on what our new videos are all about when we upload a new show. And if you hit the notification bell, it will tell you when we go live, because sometimes it's really late in the night, like tonight. But it depends on where
Into
you are.
the morning.
If you're on the into the morning. I mean, for Lenny, it's probably 6 a.m. But but with that said, John, we'll see you tomorrow on another episode of DCU Daily.